Hello, you lovely cubs, it's the Dragon Lord here, back again with a what if. Now, you might recognize this what if from somewhere, I wonder where. Anyway, this is the reboot of a series that was on my channel a long time ago. It's rewritten, it's different from the original, it's better, in my opinion at least. And yeah, so it's the month of August, the first, actually today, right? And with that being said, welcome to What If Month. So I'm going to be posting a lot this month. Don't know how many What Ifs a week. Might not be daily because I need some days to rest, of course. But definitely a lot of What Ifs coming out. Definitely some reboots that are starting up because I want to just get back to those. I want to finish them because they've never been finished. So yeah, we're going to cycle through What Ifs. There might be new What Ifs like the Luffy What Ifs. They might come out, but of course they are not going to come out as much as these, because these already know where the entire story is going to go, and the Luffy what ifs, they take forever to write. Of course, each of those what ifs is almost like 20-30 minutes long. So, just want to say there's going to be differences, but if you like this series and you're going to like the future parts, I actually have a like goal for the next part, and that like goal will be 50 likes. Why so high right off the bat is because I think this series will be loved and will be done good, and that you guys will like this. Anyway, if you're new around here, comment down below, like and subscribe, join the Discord, join the Roblox group, if you haven't already, of course. And with that out of the way, let's get into it.
I'm up now, 20,000 on a bus down, I'm on my way up, going up now, and I ain't never gonna touchdown. I ain't never gonna touchdown. No, I ain't never gonna touchdown.
One day, on a mountain called Kumotori, a happy young couple were taking a stroll. It was nice out, the weather wasn't too hot or too cold, the soft breeze of the wind was quite appealing, and overall it was a nice day. The man and the woman enjoyed their time together and were deeply in love, to the point that they got married. That was a while ago, though, and now they were simply going on a walk. After all, the woman was pregnant and was destined to give birth in a few months. Yet, whilst they walked, a powerful wind came over them. It pushed the man back. A bit surprised, he tried to cover his wife, but he couldn't get to her. He heard a noise as he looked at the sky. A crack had formed, and out came a sort of light beam. It engulfed his wife, and shortly after it would completely disappear. He'd get worried for his wife as he ran over to her, yet she was unharmed. Tanjiro, the man who was excited to become a father, focused his gaze, yet he determined that nothing was wrong, so they continued their walk like nothing happened. A few months later, their baby boy would be born, Tanjiro. There were no issues with his birth, and the doctor that came along to help out even remarked that Tanjiro was very healthy. When Tanjiro opened his eyes for the first time, however, they knew that he was different. His eyes were colored dark red like his father, yet they had a circle pattern. On the circles resided 3 tomoe, which were quite surprising to the married couple. They found it a bit strange, but loved him either way. He was determined to be a healthy, and that's all they really cared about. A few years would pass, and Tanjiro had gotten a younger sister named Nezuko in the meantime. He was now the age of 4, and he was exponentially bright for his young age. He could speak like a 13-year-old could, and he'd be able to discern many things, like things that were dangerous. His parents were pleased by the boy's bright intellect and fast learning. Not only that, but sometimes weird things would happen around the house, making them think that he was a blessed child. At age 4, however, Tanjiro performed the Hinokami Kagura, like he always did. Tanjiro, although quite dreamy, paid attention. The dance was marvelous. It captivated the young boy. Later on, he'd ask his father how he could dance like that even though his body was so frail. His father explained how there was a breathing technique that you could learn that would allow you to move forever. Tanjiro wanted to learn this technique, so his father eventually gave in and taught the boy both the dance and the technique. Tanjiro paid such careful attention to each move his father did and tried replicating them. To his surprise, he'd actually do pretty well. His father was quite pleased with Tanjiro's fast learning, so he decided to keep teaching the boy. It only took the boy a month to be at his father's level in terms of the dance. He'd also mastered the breathing technique in this time. He found it pretty easy. It wasn't super complex as he thought. The boy took an interest in multiple things. Obviously, his family supported him. In just 6 years, the boy had mastered so many skills like sewing, woodcutting, swordsmanship. The list went on. His family was quite well off compared to before. After all, Tanjiro had used the skills that he'd learned to make a considerable income for his family. They were still charcoal burners, but Tanjiro had taken an apprenticeship for half a year at a local blacksmith. It didn't take him long to surpass the master blacksmith in skills, and the blades he forged made him a small fortune. When he returned to his family, he had brought a sword that he had made for himself. After all, if you make your sword yourself, you know how to use it the best. And they lived a more casual lifestyle after all. Yet after only 2 months of him being back, his father would pass away. This was a grief-stricken moment for the family. Yet Tanjiro took the burden onto his shoulders, and decided that he'd be supporting his family no matter what. His father was quite strong. He'd be able to take down even bears without a problem. And Tanjiro wanted to be as strong as his father, so he'd start training as well. After all, what if a bear came into their house? He'd have to protect his family, right? So he started training. He'd remembered that his father never stopped using the breathing technique, so he started doing the same. After 2 years, the family would be enjoying dinner. Kie, Tanjiro's mother, walked in with some freshly made tea. However, she tripped and the boiling pot of tea was headed straight for Takeo. This had happened before. At that time, Tanjiro had gotten into the way of the pot, and that's the reason he got a scar on his forehead. Yet this time it wasn't gonna end like this. Tanjiro raised his hand instinctively, and just like that, the pot and his mother were floating. His mother would be able to pick herself up as she grabbed the pot. The younger siblings started cheering, saying how cool Tanjiro was for being able to do this magic. Yet he himself was confused by what he did. His mother simply smiled. "You truly are a blessed child," she'd say with a big smile on her face. Tanjiro knew that the loss of her husband was hard on his mother. What she had said wasn't because of what he just did, it was because of the kindness and hard work he had shown after the passing of his father. They'd continue their meal as they tried figuring out what the energy was. That night, Takeo and the younger siblings begged Tanjiro to do the Hinokami Kagura dance. Shigeru refused to go to bed if he didn't do so, so Tanjiro complied. Everybody watched as Tanjiro went to dance in the snow. His dance was now even more refined than his father's, yet the sibling could swear they saw fire with every swing Tanjiro did. The dance lasted the entire night, and his siblings were happy with it. 2 more years passed rather quickly in which Tanjiro kept training. He tried learning the energy that he felt when they had dinner, and he was able to recreate it, in fact, quite well so. He meditated for a while, and as he meditated, he felt the energy in his body. He could find certain points on his body where the energy was bottled up more. He figured out how he did the floating, and was able to attract and repel with a sort of invisible force. All it took was for him to raise his hand, and he'd be able to do this. He started trying to use the energy in his everyday work, like cutting down trees. He'd try to get the energy to manifest itself into the axe. Although not succeeding at first, he'd slowly start to be able to do so. The more he experimented, the more he learned. At one point, he'd be able to create strong winds which weren't related to the original push and pull ability he had. He'd magically be able to create water and fire, and he'd even be able to move earth at some points. Most surprising was when he used lightning. Over the course of several months, he'd do his chores whilst also learning more about his own abilities, to the point where he could take the elements and form them into different things like arrows or birds, which he could use to hunt or attack. Whilst he was trying some new things, he'd extend his hand, and a black rod came out. At first he was scared, but it didn't hurt him. The black rod would release itself from his hand at a high speed, easily piercing through a tree or two. Tanjiro made sure to remember not to use this against a person ever. He'd learned that using hand signs from different martial arts would have an effect on how the elements reacted, but he never really fully mastered anything related to this. In fact, he didn't even want to learn anything of this because he felt like it would just be too inhumane to use this against anything. One winter morning, however, Tanjiro would want to set out to the village to sell some charcoal. He didn't really have to, his family was well off because of him, but yet he wanted to go down anyway, clear his head about some things. His scar had changed over these 2 years though. It was more sharp now, yet his family simply thought that it was starting to heal, so they didn't really think much of it. After he said his goodbyes, he'd make his way down the mountain. Physically speaking, Tanjiro was above superhuman. In terms of strength and speed, he'd figured out that the energy could to some extent assist his movement and speed, as well as his strength. It was a nice thing to have along with his breathing technique. The walk down the mountain was only a 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how Tanjiro felt. He'd get to the bottom and spend most of his day in the village helping people out and selling charcoal. There were a few mercenaries, but Tanjiro had already learned swordsmanship and martial arts from people, and in terms of fighting technique, he was well above your average swordsmanship. Night fell and Tanjiro started heading back up the mountain. He was told to be careful by a villager elder who keeps watch at night. As he started going up the mountain, he smelled a faint scent. It was blood. He instantly started running at fast speed, arriving in under a minute. The door to his house was ripped off as it was laying in the snow. He'd find a man in white clothing attacking his family. So far the only person harmed was Nezuko, but the man was dripping his blood on her, almost tauntingly. Bancho Tenin, Tanjiro would say as the man at high speed flew toward him and past him, flying straight into a tree. The man got up a bit surprised, but he was relatively unharmed. Tanjiro turned around, revealing that his eyes were now bleeding, and that they had 6 tomoe instead of 3. I won't forgive you for laying your hands on my family, he'd say with an enraged expression. Muzan noticed Tanjiro's earrings and got a bit scared, although he exhaled as he laughed. After all, why would he need to be scared of Tanjiro? Shinra, Tensei, Tanjiro would say, sending an immense force towards the man, sending him flying for hundreds of meters, flattening most of the forest as well. Tanjiro would turn around and tell his mother to take care of Nezuko. He'd grab his sword which was hanging on the wall and he'd run after the man he sent flying. Tanjiro has always had a good sense of smell, but after training with the energy it would become even better, and he could tell that whatever he sent flying might look like a man, but definitely wasn't human. He'd arrive to the man who was pierced by multiple trees. He'd get rid of the trees and commend Tanjiro for being so strong. Become a demon and serve me, then I won't harm your family, the man would say with a big smile, excited like he found a once-in-a-lifetime diamond. My grandmother used to tell me stories when I was younger about demons. I won't join you, Tanjiro said as he took a breath. By instinct, Tanjiro took a stance. He'd used the Hinokami Kagura dance like how his father did. He actually figured out quite a long time ago that it was kind of combat-related. His stance resembled someone that Muzan feared. The man got scared and wanted to run away. However, Tanjiro ran forward at lightning-fast speed. Muzan could swear he saw lightning spark off of Tanjiro's body. Tanjiro prepared to slash at the man, a fire enveloping his blade. But before he could, the man retreated into some doors that just appeared out of nowhere. Tanjiro would be agitated, but he had other things to worry about, so he started running back home. He arrived shortly after as he ran up to his sister. She had already been stitched up by their mother, who was worried for Nezuko's health. Nezuko was profoundly sweating and breathing heavily. Tanjiro tried moving the energy in her body to assist. He knew by moving the energy around his own body how the anatomy of a human looked like, and very few times when he focused on people he'd look almost through them, and he'd be able to see their bone structure as well as their organs and all of that. This had only happened twice, but the images were burned into his mind. He found that something was wrong with her blood, like a parasite had a hold of her somehow. He tried to get rid of it, but it took almost 2 hours just for her condition to get a bit better. 5 total hours had passed, and Nezuko finally got a bit better. Her sweating stopped and her breathing calmed. 2 more hours was what they'd have to wait for daybreak would arrive at that time. He couldn't leave his family behind in case of that man coming back, so he stayed with them. Him and his mother stayed next to Nezuko for another hour, but her condition worsened again. They'd have to take her to a doctor. Tanjiro picked up his sister and started carrying her on his back. They'd prepare some lanterns to make their way down the mountain. Meanwhile, hundreds of meters away, a man would find a destroyed forest, where he'd start following the destruction. Tanjiro and the others set out, following the path Tanjiro would usually take to go down the mountain. The man that followed the destruction found the Kamado residence. He'd do a quick inspection but realized that the people got attacked by a demon. He'd see the footsteps in the snow and start following them. Tanjiro and his family were at a dangerous cliff. Takeo almost fell, but Tanjiro caught him in time. Whilst this happened, he picked up a strange smell. "Mom, take Nezuko for a bit," Tanjiro would say, passing his sister over to their mother. "If you're tired, I can carry her down," Giyu would say, smiling whilst patting her son. She felt saddened that she couldn't do anything when that man came in and attacked them. "No, that's not it. There's a strange smell," he'd say, but at that moment the man that had followed the destruction caught up to them. He'd see Tanjiro and rush at the boy, kicking him away from the family. "Don't worry, ma'am. I'll take care of that demon. You don't have to be worried," he'd say, rushing at Tanjiro, who was still falling down the cliff. The man pulled out his sword and tried attacking Tanjiro mid-air. Tanjiro, however, quickly drew his sword and deflected the attack. "Bansho Tenin," he'd say, pulling the man towards him, then kicking him down to the ground, landing on top of him, pinning down his sword and pointing his own at the man's neck. "Who are you? Are you with that man?" Tanjiro would ask angrily. He'd make a fire in his palm for light as he looked at the man's face. He had blue eyes and a long blue hair. His haori was red on one side and checkered green on yellow on the other. Giyu would get a look at Tanjiro. He'd already see his weird eyes and make out that he'd be a demon because of them. Now he saw that this boy had superhuman strength, a weird supernatural ability, and not only that, but his eyes had a pattern, meaning he could be an upper moon, or a special demon nonetheless. He had already suspected this and sent a Kasugai crow to request assistance. Daytime was 20 minutes away at top, and reinforcements were at least 15 minutes away. He'd have to hold on for 15 minutes at most. He used his other hand to throw snow into Tanjiro's eyes. "My name is Giyu Tomioka. I'm a demon slayer and I will slay you," he said, swinging his sword down at an immense speed. "Water breathing, 8th form, waterfall basin." He'd take a breath and say this. Tanjiro widened his stance as he as well took a breath, as he slashed upward, deflecting Giyu's attack with ease. He'd concentrate and his blade would heat up, as it was now engulfed in flames. Giyu had to hold out no matter what, but this was insane. Who was this person? Was the first thought in his mind. Their fight continued, but with each blade, Giyu felt more and more inferior. 2 more minutes remained until reinforcements would arrive. There were 2 Hashiras nearby that Giyu knew of. One was Kyojuro Rengoku, the Flame Hashira, and the other was Tengen Uzui, the Sound Hashira. Rengoku's mission was closer, but with Tengen's speed, they'd probably arrive at the same time. "Are you done fighting now?" Tanjiro would ask, getting worried about Nezuko. "Not yet," Giyu would say, rushing at Tanjiro in a frontal attack. "I'm sorry about this, but my sister might be dying. I don't know what that man did to her after his blood dripped on her, but I have to take her to a doctor," Tanjiro would say as Giyu was within striking distance. This caught Giyu off guard, but this kid was talking about Muzan. He couldn't say anything though, as he had been hit by Tanjiro and was losing consciousness. He could hear swords clashing before he went completely unconscious. Tanjiro now had 2 people in front of him. "Are you guys with this man?" "He's not dead, just knocked out. Now please move aside. I have to help my family," Tanjiro would say, releasing an intimidating energy. Tengen and Rengoku both went serious right away. They started fighting this person together. 5 minutes would pass and the sun was coming up. "Hold him down," Rengoku would say, restricting Tanjiro's sword movement. Tengen also came in, holding down Tanjiro. The sun hit Tanjiro, but nothing happened. "Get off me, Shinra Tensei," he'd say, sending them both flying. Giyu woke up from the blast. "Guys, stop, he's a human!" Giyu screamed out. Rengoku and Tengen, who had their swords drawn, stopped in their tracks. "He fought Muzan, his family got attacked," he'd say. Before Tengen and Rengoku could sheath their weapons though, they'd hear a scream. Looking up, they'd see Nezuko flying down to them. Tanjiro was worried about her and intercepted her, catching her and landing. "Are you alright, Nezuko?" Tanjiro would ask, worried. She had increased in size, but not by a lot, but definitely noticeable. Her teeth were sharp now, and her hands were claws. No way. She became a demon? But the sun is touching her. She's not disintegrating. Tengen would be baffled. "What are you guys on about?" Tanjiro would scream out, angered that they'd call his sister a demon. After all, she was the beauty of Kumotori. Before any of them could answer, though, Kie would scream out, "Tanjiro, are you alright?" from the top of the cliff. "Let's talk about it when we get inside, and when your family is safe," Giyu would say. Tanjiro wanted to hear them out, so he'd follow the three Hashira. They told the Kamados to get their valuables as they wouldn't be safe in their home anymore. So they went back up the mountain, got everything they needed, and started following the Hashira. On the way, they talked a bit, but the family was a bit weirded out. The man with red and orange hair introduced himself as Kyojuro Rengoku. He was currently talking to a crow. Most surprising was when the crow talked back. They'd arrive after half a day of walking. Some of the children couldn't keep up and were tired, so the Hashira carried them. They'd have arrived at the mansion that had a wisteria symbol on the door, and they'd be greeted to enter. But what they discussed will have to wait for the next part. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this What If. If you did, like and subscribe, as always. Comment down below what you thought of it, of course. And yeah, still gonna have to figure out what special ability we're gonna give Tanjiro, because, you know, Madara has Limbo, Sasuke has that weird teleport power. We don't really know what we're gonna give Tanjiro yet, but we'll see. Yeah, he's gonna be OP in this one. Obviously, it's the RinneSharingan. So yeah, not much to say. Like and subscribe. Like goals 50 likes. You guys already know that. Join the Discord. Join the Roblox group. And with that out of the way, my name is the Dragon Lord, and I am signing out.